So today I was going to talk about compassion for self and for the world. I gave a Dharma talk on Sunday, and I had this quote from Trungpa Rinpoche that kind of stuck out for me. And he says, the Mahayana brings greater vision and greater action. Heroism, celebrations, and excitement are all solidly a part of it. You begin to like your environment, and as egoless as you may be, you begin to like yourself. The appreciation of the world outside is called compassion, and the appreciation of yourself is called Maitri. Unless the two are working together, it is a dead end. Trungpa just kind of says it like it is, you know? So I'm just going to repeat that. The appreciation of the world outside is called compassion, and the appreciation of yourself is called Maitri. Unless the two are working together, it is a dead end. So, appreciation of yourself. A number of you have come to our Foundations of Mindfulness series that we do, a series of 8 classes that our abbot, Roshi Robert Joshin Althouse, created from his long experience and study of the Dharma. And people come to it because they want to, they're kind of at the end of their rope, a lot of them. They're so anxious and, you know, I got to try something. I think it's going to be meditation. I hope it's going to be meditation. So they come to the class, right? They're suffering. And so a process that happens through the class is they're starting to learn to be with themselves, right? And this practice of mindfulness meditation based on a spiritual foundation. And we call that living a Zen-inspired life of openness, empathy, and clarity, because we've secularized the practice a little bit to make it more user-friendly, shall we say. But it is solidly built on a Zen Buddhist foundation. Openness, empathy, and clarity. And we say that our definition of mindfulness is an intentional awareness that is embodied and without judgment. So right there, you're starting to become intentional about your life. And you are starting to learn about what embodiment really means. And for most of us, we have no idea what that means because we have been in a very heady culture where the intellect is all important. And the rest of the body, well, it's there to carry your head around. What else is it for? So through this process, you're starting to recognize, oh, I have a body. I kind of knew that, but oh, I can actually kind of really take notice and be precise about my embodied experience, which takes a little time if you haven't been connected very much. And then this without judgment part, so important, because once you start taking notice of your thoughts, you go, wow, I have a lot of thoughts going on here. And that's probably why I came. I'm trying to get rid of these thoughts. But you'll notice there's a lot of judgments in there. Judgments about you, judgments about others, all kinds of judgments. So we are working, we're empowering you to live a Zen-inspired life of openness, empathy, and clarity, to take notice of what you are thinking and to loosen the grip on your thoughts and let it go. Let it go. And that begins the process, especially the thoughts about you, of being kind and gentle to yourself. Because a lot of us have a strong inner critic, and not to mention the perfectionist. So mindfulness, I've been learning a couple of new big words here, and that is interoception and proprioception. And mindfulness helps you with both of those senses, right? We know the regular senses about taste, touch, feel, see, hear, but there's another less developed sense, the sense of interoception, what is going on inside your body, your organs, your emotions. You're getting in touch with this and kind of sharpening that sense. So an example of a physical sensation might be anxiety. I think we probably know what that feels like, right? Pounding heart, stomach going like that, like that, right? But what about, it was interesting, this morning I got up early at 3:30. I just got up. When you give a talk, you get a little wound up, right, Shikon? You could probably attest to that. Okay, so at about 5, I noticed I was starting to get hungry. But it's way too early to eat for me at 5 o'clock. So I thought, okay, what else is going on? Am I really hungry, or am I actually tired? And then my body is craving for maybe a pick-me-up like sugar, right? So that's kind of interesting. So, okay, I got some caffeine, some green tea. I was drinking hot water. I drink hot water the first, when I first get up, kind of flush everything out, right? I think it's a good, healthy thing to do. And then I had some tea and I noticed the hunger went away. Or if this were maybe midday, maybe I needed to lie down and just rest instead of go for that sugary treat, which I don't need, I don't think. So anyway, it's getting in touch, right, with the physical, interoception. And mindfulness helps us to be precise with what are the feelings going on there. The other word that I really like is proprioception. And that is perception or awareness of the position or movement of the body. And being a hula teacher, this is very important. I used it as a student. You would look, okay, my arm is there, it's matching the teacher, right? Or when I work with the students, I have them look, because sometimes they just do not know where their body part is. And I've been studying with Natalie Goldberg. She has a way of writing workshop she's doing right now for 6 weeks, every Saturday, 3 hours. She talks and then, we write. She's got like over 2,000 people doing this with her, and it's coordinated with Shambhala. Prajna Studios is doing this. And she says, it's good to pinpoint where that inner critic is physically. Where is it in your body? So I thought, okay, let me think. Okay, there's fear now. I can see fear for me is right here. So it's kind of an interesting exercise. Next time there's a strong feeling like fear or anxiety, or the inner critic is going to town for you, where is it exactly? Can you pinpoint it? And that's important because then you can see that it's not all of you. There it is, right there. For her, it was like right here. And so she can go, okay, there's my inner critic, because she's written like 30 books. And she says, there was a period during this pandemic where she wasn't writing. She wasn't, that's what she loves to do. And her inner critic was going to town saying, you are not a writer. What do you think you're doing? Just having its way with her. So that was interesting to pinpoint. Oh, okay, there's my inner critic. Okay, I can see it, I can let it go. Just a part of me. So meditation is fabulous for increasing your sense of proprioception as well, which means that all of you meditators should be eventually good hula dancers. So I'll say a little bit about openness, empathy, and clarity, since that is what we aim to empower you to do here: openness, empathy, and clarity. By the way, I did want to mention, which I mentioned on Sunday, I was just teaching a workshop to the Northwestern University's multicultural affairs. And there were 12 students there. And the director, Eric Budzinski, he was one of 2 males dancing, because I was teaching them dancing. And he's been here before on a Sesshin, a full-time Sesshin. He's training to be a mindfulness instructor. And at the end of it, he was dancing. He said, hula is an act of resistance. It is resisting the inner critic and the perfectionist who says, you cannot do this. You are not built for this. It is resisting it. And so he was up there dancing, and let me tell you, by the end of my little teaching thing, he looked beautiful. And he's not a dancer. He would call himself not a dancer. And yesterday, Shikan mentioned the 3 tenets of a Zen peacemaker. That is very much part of our spiritual foundation as well here. And that was Bernie Glassman and his wife Jishu Holmes, both gone now, they came up with these 3 tenets of a Zen peacemaker. And that is the practice of not knowing, bearing witness, and action that arises when you do those first 2 tenets well. So that is very much interwoven with our openness, empathy, and clarity. So openness, we say, the prerequisite for openness is teachability, right? Can you learn from your life? If you are full of opinions and judgments about how you're supposed to be, can you really be open? So the practice here is not knowing, letting go of those opinions and how you see the world so strongly that you're holding on so tightly. Can you let go of those fixed ideas about yourself, others, and the world? And I think the only way you can do that is through this meditation practice. I mean, I'm sure there are other practices, but this is what I know. What do you think that feels like when you let go of all of these fixed ideas and you're really practicing not knowing? What does that feel like to you? Just unmute yourself and say what you think.
Curious.
Curious, yes, yes, good, right? Because if you know everything, are you going to be curious? Not really. Good. What else this not knowing?
Happy.
Happy.
Generous.
What was that?
Generous.
Generous, yes.
Playful.
Playful, yes. Playful, you're not weighed down by all of these ideas about how things ought to be. Yes, Elizabeth?
Relieved.
Relieved?
Yes.
Yes, a big relief for sure.
Relaxed.
Relaxed. Yes, relaxed. Yes.
A feeling of lightness.
Lightness, yes. Good, very good. Raul?
Comfort.
Comfort, yes. Spaciousness, right? There's space, it's not claustrophobic. Great, that's not knowing, that's openness. Yeah. A total openness to the situation, a deep listening. All right, empathy. Empathy is the beginning of compassion. It's being able to imagine another's suffering. It's bearing witness, staying when the going gets tough, when you'd rather, as I said on Sunday, exit stage left. Right. And it's bearing witness not only to the suffering, but also bearing witness to the joy of the world. And to see all aspects of a situation, including your judgments and attachments. Compassion is actually caring for a person and feeling their pain. And also, isn't it about us too, being compassionate to ourselves as well and bearing witness? Compassionate people know how to draw boundaries. They know how to take full responsibility for their emotions. And this we could spend the whole hour talking about, right? Such an important thing. You first have to recognize how you're feeling, and that interoception is so important. Then you can work with it, and then you can see how your emotions are tied to needs, right? Needs, that's a whole nother course, right? But just know that we all have basic life-serving needs, like the need for, of course, clean air, clean water, right? A roof over our heads, food to eat, but also needs for respect, community to be included, love. These are basic, inalienable human needs, and I would say rights. So meditation trains you to bear witness by strengthening your awareness of thoughts, feelings, and sensations as they arise and pass. As your awareness strengthens, you begin to experience spaciousness and stability, and see that you have a choice in your response to what's arising. In bearing witness, you are actively engaged and embodied, even struggling with whatever is arising. And then clarity or wisdom, prajna. Shikan talked about the Mahaprajna Paramita Heart Sutra yesterday. Prajna, wisdom. So the prerequisite for wisdom or clarity is integrity, having integrity. What you do matters. How you treat others, how you treat yourself matters. So compassion is how wisdom operates in the world. Bernie Glassman would say, you can see how enlightened people are by how socially engaged they are in the world. So this ongoing and consistent practice, like anything, the more you do it, the more it gets ingrained in your body wisdom, that when you lose your center, your sense of center and groundedness, and fall into reactivity, you also regain your center a little more quickly. And when you continually perform this practice in the midst of all your daily activities, the practice will be more readily accessible to you during challenging times. So our classes really give you a wonderful information and process for developing this Maitri, this friendliness to yourself. So I wanted to also make a connection to the wilderness in our country, you know, the appreciation of the world, right? Outside is called compassion. And I've just been feeling a need to kind of re-immerse myself into the wilderness, right? In fact, Roshi and I are taking a little break after Sesshin, and we're going first to see the those cranes, the sandhill cranes in the Goose Pond Fish and Wildlife area. That's one of the places they go to in their great migration, besides the Platte River is that in Nebraska? It's in Nebraska. Yeah, so we've never been, so I'm very excited to see this great migration. I hope they're still there. I think this is the time for them. And then going to a small little town in Kentucky on the Blood River that empties into the Kentucky Lake. So I'm feeling a need for that. And I'm also feeling a need to know what's going on with the wilderness in this country, because our population has been continuing to increase. Not only in the United States, but across the world. You know, we're up to, I don't know, 3 or 4 billion people. And you know, where people go, they build houses and they take up wild space that was meant for the animals. We have, of course, a history here in this country and Native peoples. So a quote from Dogen: "These mountains and waters at this moment are the manifestation of the great way of ancient Buddhas. These mountains and waters at this moment are the manifestation of the great way of ancient Buddhas." So Dogen's saying that the mountains and rivers are manifestations of the Dharma, or they are Dharma. The all-pervading true Dharma means that the entire universe is the truth. So I've been reading this beautiful book by Terry Tempest Williams, who wrote Erosion, Essays of Undoing. Essays of Undoing. Here in Zen, I guess we would say essays of non-doing. She's saying essays of undoing. So she's an author, and she is now a writer in residence at the Harvard Divinity School. She lives in Castle Valley, Utah, and also Cambridge. So I was listening to her on Audible as I was sewing, and I noticed that I just started weeping when I heard her read this chapter. So I wanted to read some of it to you. The chapter is called The Council of Pronghorn. Has anybody seen a pronghorn here? Yay, Julie, the only one. I think I haven't seen a pronghorn either, except, not in real life. I think I've seen a picture of, but not in real life. That's awesome. Real life, Julie?
Are those the ones in Wyoming?
Yes.
Yeah, real life.
Cool. All right, this chapter is called The Council of Pronghorn. And it starts with a quote by David Foster Wallace, who in his review of contemporary fiction, 1993, I strongly suspect a big part of real art fiction's job is to aggravate this sense of entrapment and loneliness and death in people, to move people to countenance it, since any possible human redemption requires us first to face what's dreadful, what we want to deny. All right, so what got me there was to face what's dreadful, what we want to deny. This is bearing witness. So that got my interest. And then Terry Tempest Williams. What I want to deny is that fossil fuels are killing us. What I want to deny is that living in the state of Wyoming is living in the heart of denial. And if we want to see, quote, entrapment and loneliness and death, unquote, all we have to do is go out and visit the oil patch in Sublette County or Sweetwater County or Gillette, more commonly known as Razor City in Campbell County, Wyoming. The dreadful truth is that if Wyoming were a nation, it would be among the largest coal-producing countries in the world. Since 1996, more than 7.7 billion tons of coal have been produced, most of it coming from the Powder River Basin. Trains leave Gillette 24 hours a day carrying coal from our state to yours. And I believe we've got trains going by Oak Park that carries oil or something. We live in a rectangle that borders Utah, Idaho, Montana, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Colorado, all part of the fossil fuel boom in the interior West. This is a ravaged landscape and few see it, even those who live here. In 2007, I accepted an invitation to become the first writer in residence at the University of Wyoming's Creative Writing Department. The students I worked with were extraordinary. Many of them were local, but others were not. The students, poets and nonfiction and fiction writers, decided they wanted to do more than examine themselves on the page. They wanted to go outside. They wanted to get a glimpse into the state of Wyoming and believe storytelling could open a door to what a sense of place really means, a gauge and a guide to what folks in Wyoming were thinking. Together, we created a program called Weather Reports. It would be simple, direct, and non-threatening. What's the weather like in your town? Students created a roadmap. We would visit 7 communities in the state that were being impacted by oil and gas and coal bed methane gas development, from Pinedale to the Powder River Basin to Rawlins, Riverton, and the Wind River Reservation. The weather reports took place on Friday evenings when we would gather at a library or arts center, a politically neutral zone, and invite the community to gather in the name of storytelling. On Saturday, we would offer a writing workshop to those in attendance who were interested in developing their stories on the page. The format was always the same. A student would read a story they had written, then invite those in attendance to tell their own. We would form a circle and begin with one question: what keeps you up at night? No one was prepared for the emotion or depth of sharing that followed. Our first weather report took place in the town of Pinedale, elevation 7182 feet, located at the base of the Wind River Range, population 1,865. It is also a boom town, 32 miles north of the Jonah oil field, which is estimated to contain 10.5 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. It was standing room only in the public library. Residents talked about poisoned water, the elevated benzene levels related to the oil and gas development, the ozone alert that was posted for the first time in their history on that very day. We listened to senior people, primarily women, talk about Project Wagon Wheel. In the 1960s, during the Cold War, the Atomic Energy Commission planned to extract Wyoming natural gas with 5 underground nuclear explosions. The women who protested that action rose to tell their history, and it was personal. I'll be damned if they were going to blow up our backyard, sage or no sage, one of the women said. They recounted a straw poll in Sublette County on the presidential election day in 1972 that showed 970 people were opposed to Project Wagon Wheel, 279 were in favor, and 105 were undecided. This was a revelation to the 100+ residents in the room. A young man stood up and said, "If you could stop 5 nuclear bombs, we can hold these gas companies accountable." One story of courage followed another until well after midnight. The librarian stood in the back of the room. Her words closed the evening. "One day I think I'm going to wake up and Wyoming will just be one giant hole in the ground with everything we love gone." In the town of Gillette, elevation 4,556 feet, population 30,560, a mother stood up and said, "What keeps me up at night is the health of my children. My 5-year-old son has a rash on his legs and our well water is red." She paused to control her emotions. Is anyone else experiencing this? One by one, other mothers stood in solidarity and shared similar stories. Then 2 nurses took the floor. "Can anyone tell us why we can't keep enough chemotherapy in this town to treat all the cancers in Campbell County?" When we arrived in Casper, the financial hub of the state, elevation 5,118 feet, population 57,814, it was a different story. The state senator, Kit Jennings, showed up in his shiny black cowboy boots, wearing his sport coat, a bolo tie, and Levi's, held up by a belt with a silver buckle shaped like an oil rig. Everyone knew who he was, and everyone knew he was in the pocket of the coal bed methane industry, now following our every move. They didn't like people talking. Wyoming is a state of big distances with few occasions to assemble. People were isolated, and the oil and gas companies liked it that way. The industry had gotten to Jennings, and Jennings was going to get to us. The senator might as well have entered the room with a loaded shotgun. So violent was his rhetoric and so personal. But a circle had been created, and a space of respect had been established. The woman seated next to him handed him the microphone. What keeps me up at night is thinking I have to show up to a hippy-dippy circle like this. You say there is a direct correlation between the rise of crystal meth and rise of rigs in our town? Well, that's bullshit. What do you know? He was addressing his remarks to me. You're an outsider from Utah. We listened. It was his turn to tell his story. When he finally realized there would be no confrontation, no conflict, no heated exchange of words, he simply paused and said, I was raised on the oil patch as a kid. People looked down on us, called us white trash. And with that, the combative senator began to tell the truth of his life. We witnessed the art of storytelling and story receiving. Senator Jennings had tried to shut down the students' weather reports and pressure the president of the University of Wyoming to fire me. But President Buchanan defended our program. Freedom of speech. What's wrong with telling stories and listening to one another? What's wrong with gathering as a community to consider where we live, what we love, and what is at stake in the 21st century? What lawmakers fear most, especially those financed by the energy industry, is the art of independent thinking, the arc of creative thinking. What power tries to control is the story, especially the story that sees the world as a complicated whole. What the oil and gas companies know is that if they can keep people isolated and the story fragmented, keep as little known as possible, and in some cases lie, then they can go about their business without protest or accountability. But the most revelatory of all our weather reports took place in the bars in Riverton, elevation 4,951 feet, population 11,058, adjacent to the Wind River Reservation. Home to the Northern Arapaho and Eastern Shoshone tribes. Riverton, Wyoming is famous for having 16 drinking holes in a 2-mile stretch. The bars are segregated. We went to a roughneck bar, and an Indian bar. The Roughnecks were making big money at big risk with long days, where a little meth went a long way to carry them through what is known as a tower. 12-hour days for 14 days straight, and then a week off to rest. We learned Wyoming has the highest worker fatality rate in the nation, 3 times the national average. The men know this. And one young oil worker after another told stories of death by, quote, tripping pipe, or throwing chain accidents, or incidents where the drilling mud caught fire or the actual rigs blew up. But their stories always had the same tagline: it was the guy next to me. At age 21, many of them saw themselves as invincible. The sick thing, quote, the sick thing is the family whose boy got chewed up on the rig, received a check for $10,000 from the Worker Compensation Fund. And what's really effed up is that the company only got fined $625 for the chain tong mess up. The stories told in the Indian bar where the Arapahoes and Shoshone hang were not about jobs on the rigs at all. They were about no jobs. Their stories were about poverty, missing women, and bison being killed once they crossed the boundary of Yellowstone National Park. Some of the men were blunt enough to ask why we were hanging out in the wrong bar. Then it got real. The students came to understand that story engages the whole person. People lean forward. Words matter and cut through race, class, and politics. Stories move us and move through us, become the conscience of a community. So that was what they did. Those listening circles were like acts of compassion, finding out what people really thought in these areas that they had little or no chance of being heard. So now, for a little transition toward the end, I thought you might want to stand up and do a little movement. What, me? Yes, you. So stand up, everybody. I wanted to just end this talk with this fabulous chant. It's called Kaikukulu, to stand as a pillar, to be a pillar, Pillar. And this is the chant that the protectors of Mauna Kea on Hawaii, they would do this 3 times a day as part of their protocol, the spirituality of protecting their mountain from the building of a $1 billion telescope consortium of 5 nations. So what this one is, it's this circular hip movement. We're going to start moving our hips. Okay, here we go. All right, so let me tell you, when you move your hips, you want to have gentle knees, okay, gentle knees. And I want your knees to actually kind of push back and forth. Just do that now. Just have your knees go back and forth. Okay, so you're just having your knees go forward, just like that. And notice, just doing that. It's kind of like you're doing some knee exercises, back and forth. Just when one is forward, the other is back. You're just really kind of it's almost shifting your weight on different foot, but you're just really, and you notice your hips are going down, the one that you have your bent, right? Is everybody doing that okay? Feeling all right there? Okay, now if you have in the past done a hula hoop when you were younger, it's the hula hoop movement, all right? So if you haven't, now when you do this with your knees, it helps to push your hip back, and you're gonna start with your, okay? So I want you to, whichever way is easier, to the right or left, I want your hip to go around. It doesn't have to be a big motion, but it's just a little circular motion. And notice when you bend your knees, it's kind of pushing your hip around, okay? And it doesn't have to be big, but try to make it round, a nice small. Is that good? Everybody feeling that? This is called an ami. And usually it's going to the right, which is counterclockwise. And I'm sure the Taoists must have a good explanation for counterclockwise, right? The energy that you're creating with this circular movement. Excellent. Now there's 2 slow ones and 3 fast ones. There's 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. You just 3 fast ones and then slow, slow, 1, 2, 3. Great. You're just lubricating some joints in there that probably need a little lubrication, right? Let blood flow, energy flow. Okay, good. So we're going to clap also. And then when we clap one time, we're going to 2 slow claps goes with the 2 slow amis. And then when it goes fast, it's 3 fast claps. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3. Good. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Good. Okay, it's coordinating things here, right? Excellent. Very good. Now, in between, we're going to step forward. 1, 2. It's just 2, you know, so you're stepping forward. 1, 2. And then we're going to go, here we go. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And step forward. 1, 2. And then same thing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Step forward. 1, 2. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2. Okay, now when we're stepping forward, we're going to step forward 4 times. Do those circular amis 4 times. We're going to make this with our hand motions. There's one more thing you have to do. Okay, so here, this is your left hand is in the middle of your right palm. Your right palm is facing to the left. And we're going to do it on both sides. This is the symbol for mountain. When we take our step, they're going to be 1 step, 2 steps. And I'm your mirror, okay? I'm your mirror. So have your right hand up here while my left is up, and then here. Good. And then we're going to do this. 2, 1, 2, 3. And we're going to step again. The next one is going to be like this. This is the symbol for an altar. Be a pillar for the altar, for the sacred. Okay? And then 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to do this. This is pohaku, the stone. The stone, or it could be the land, symbolizing, right? We have a lot of lava that formed our islands. So we stand as a pillar for the island, for the aina, for the land. For the land. Strength, right? Yeah, kind of. And the last one is this. For man, for Kanaka, for man. That's why we be a pillar. It's saying, why be a pillar? For the mountain. And then we say, why be a pillar? For the sacred, the altar. The sacred, everything is sacred, right? In our environment, in our life. For the land, the rock, strong like a rock, and then be a pillar for humans, for the people. And then, okay, we're gonna do this whole series 3 times. Okay, and I'll do a chant. Okay, here we go. It's usually a drum beat, bum, bum, and then we have our 1 clap. Okay, here we go, and hey, hala, hey, hey, mountain. Hey, hala, hey, hey, ahu, the sacred, the altar. Hey, hala, hey, hey, pohaku, the land. Hey, hala, hey, kanaka, the people, for the people, we're strong. Hey, hala, hey, hey, mauna, the mountain. Hey, hala, hey, hey, the altar, the sacred. Hey, hala, hey, hey, pohaku, the land. Hey, hala, hey, hey, kanaka, the people. Hey, hala, hey, hey, mauna. Hey, hala, hey, hey, ahu. Hey, hala, hey, hey, pohaku. Hey, hala, hey, hey, kanaka. And end with 1. Stand tall. Yay! That was Kaikukulu. All right, good job. All right. So that is my presentation. Any questions or comments for today?
That was great, June. Thank you so much. I love the dancing. It's beautiful.
Great. I'm glad you do, Robert. We'll have to start a class for men.
Yeah, just moving my hips was
Does that feel great? Yeah,
really
really
like a move. Yeah.
high energy. Fabulous.
Same challenge in salsa dancing.
Oh, that's right. You're a salsa dancer, so
Yeah.
you have an edge there.
That was wonderful, Sensei. I love the stories about Wyoming. That was really moving because we don't hear about it, you know. We forget what it's like for people in the Southwest. So, and also how powerful stories are and how powerful community can be when we build and nurture community that gets fragmented by these kinds of things. So, wonderful.
Right. We're using the coal, so we are complicit.
We are, yeah.
And the natural gas, and what are we doing to the environment? You know, we got to wake up here. Wake up.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts before we close? Or that was kind of so that hula they did 3 times a day. You know, the protectors have been out there. Gee, I mean, they've been protecting the mountain for 5 years from the building of a telescope that would be 18 stories tall. There are already 14 telescopes on Mauna Kea, which is a premier spot for astronomy because of its location. But these Native Hawaiians, and a lot of them, not everybody, but I would say a good majority have, who, the cool thing is about it is that the language has been having a huge revival in Hawaii. I think the Hawaiians are really leading the indigenous communities with reviving their language, and they have even graduated from high school, all the way from preschool to high school. So you're starting to hear it in the supermarkets, probably now more than ever since I've been gone. I think 30 years they've been working on this language revitalization. So with the language is the culture. And the culture is, we have to, you take care of the land will take care of you. All right, then. We'll see you. Happy sitting. Thank you so much for your deep and strong practice, everybody. It supports me as well. Thank you.